The fall of Earth. The stars had always seemed so peaceful from Earth. Minho Park stood on the bridge of humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, the horizon's dawn, watching those distant lights grow closer. After 200 years of dreaming, humans were finally reaching out to touch the galaxy. Minho felt his heart race as the massive structure appeared before them. It was a space station unlike anything humanity had ever built, stretching for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. This was it. First contact with alien civilizations. The communications officer turned to Minho with wide eyes. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission." "It's a welcome message. They've been waiting for us," Minho smiled. Waiting for them. The galaxy had noticed humanity's achievement, and they were being welcomed. He straightened his uniform and prepared to make history. "Open a channel. Let's introduce ourselves to our neighbors." What Minho didn't know was that the welcome message was not warm. It was a summons. Within hours, Minho and his crew were escorted to the council chamber of the Galactic Collective. The room was enormous, filled with creatures from dozens of worlds. Some looked like insects grown to the size of humans. Others were clouds of glowing gas contained in floating spheres. Some had too many limbs, others had none. But all of them turned to look at the humans with what Minho could only describe as cold interest. Jiwan Li, Earth's appointed ambassador, stepped forward. She had spent years preparing for this moment, learning everything humanity knew about diplomacy and first contact protocols. She began to speak, introducing humanity as a young species eager to learn and cooperate with the galactic community. The insectoid creatures at the center of the council chamber made a clicking sound. A translation appeared on the screens around the room. "We know what you are. We have studied your broadcasts, your history, your wars." Jiwan felt a chill run down her spine. "Every species has a difficult past. We've learned from our mistakes. We come in peace, hoping to—" "You are violent," another voice interrupted. This one came from a being that looked like living crystal. "You are among yourselves. You destroy your own planet. You create weapons of terrible power. Your first instinct is always conflict." Minho stepped beside Jiwan. "That was our past. We've changed. We've had nearly 100 years of global peace. We've united as one world. We irrelevant." The clicking sound came again from the insectoid leader. "The collective has existed for 12,000 years. We have seen species like yours before, young, aggressive, technologically advancing rapidly. If we allow you to spread among the stars, you will become a threat. History has taught us this lesson." "We do not make the same mistake twice." The council chamber fell silent. Jiwan felt her blood turn to ice. "What are you saying?" "The Galactic Collective has voted. Humanity is too dangerous to be permitted to exist beyond your home system. You will return to Earth. You will be contained. If you refuse, you will be eliminated." Minho couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're threatening to destroy us? For crimes we haven't committed? For a future you think might happen? It is not a threat. It is a judgment based on analysis and precedent. You have one standard cycle to comply." The humans were escorted back to their ship under armed guard. As the horizon's dawn raced back toward Earth, Minho sent urgent messages ahead. War was coming. Humanity had reached for the stars and found only enemies. Back on Earth, Admiral Hyunwoo Choi received the warning and immediately began mobilizing every defense. Every nation put aside their differences. The United Earth Defense Force assembled every warship, every weapons platform, every resource they had. It wasn't much compared to what was coming, but humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Daeun Kim was a fighter pilot stationed on Mars when the call came. Every pilot was ordered to scramble. She launched her interceptor and joined the growing formation of human ships. Thousands of vessels gathered between Earth and the outer system, waiting for the enemy. They didn't have to wait long. The collective fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of locusts. There were thousands of ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity had built. Their weapons charged with light that seemed to bend space itself. Hyunwoo gave the order to engage. The human fleet surged forward. Dane flew her interceptor straight at a ship 10 times her size, firing missiles and railgun rounds. She scored hits, watching armor melt away, but the alien ship kept coming. Around her, human ships exploded as the alien weapons found their marks. For every enemy ship destroyed, humanity lost 20. But they fought anyway. The battle raged for hours. Hyunwoo coordinated the defense from the orbital command station above Earth, trying to use every tactical advantage. Every trick humanity had learned from centuries of warfare. But it wasn't enough. The collective had superior numbers, superior technology, and 12,000 years of experience. When the enemy fleet broke through the defensive lines and reached Earth orbit, Hyunwoo knew it was over. He watched on the screens as the bombardment began. Beams of energy lanced down from the alien ships, striking cities across the planet. New York vanished in a flash of light. Tokyo, Moscow, Mumbai, Seoul. One by one, humanity's greatest cities were erased. Dayun screamed into her radio as she watched her homeworld burn. Her fuel was nearly gone, her weapons empty, but she kept firing until her interceptor was hit by enemy fire. The last thing she saw before her ship exploded was Earth's blue surface turning gray and black. Hyunwoo sat in his command chair, watching the end of everything. The orbital station shook as enemy fire struck nearby platforms. He opened a final transmission to all remaining human ships. "This is Admiral Choi. Earth is lost. All surviving vessels retreat. Scatter into deep space, go dark. Humanity must survive even if only in hiding. Do not let them find you. Make them believe we are extinct. One day we will return. One day we will—" The transmission cut off as the command station exploded. Across the solar system, the surviving human ships fled in every direction. Colony vessels that had been preparing for peaceful exploration now became refugee ships. Mining stations in the asteroid belt went silent, hiding among the rocks. Research outposts in the outer system disabled their beacons and drifted into the dark. Tae Jin-yoon commanded the colony ship New Seoul, carrying 50,000 survivors. He watched Earth die on his screens, then gave the order he never thought he would give. "Kill all transmitters. Disable anything that can be tracked. We're going into the deep black. From this moment on, humanity is a ghost." The New Seoul turned away from Earth and accelerated into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the collective fleet finished its work. Earth's atmosphere burned. Its oceans boiled away. The planet that had given birth to humanity became a dead rock floating in space. The collective commander sent a report back to the council. "The human homeworld has been sterilized. All orbital infrastructure destroyed. No survivors detected. The species has been eliminated as ordered." The report was accepted. Humanity was declared extinct. The collective fleet departed, returning to their regular duties, satisfied that another potential threat had been removed. But in the darkness between the stars, 50 million humans drifted silently, hearts burning with rage and grief. They were broken, scattered, nearly destroyed, but they were not extinct. And in that darkness, something new began to grow. Not just the will to survive, but the will to ensure that no species would ever suffer what humanity had suffered. The collective had made their greatest mistake. They had left humanity alive, and humanity would remember. Shadows and survival. 50 years passed in the darkness. Soman Han was born in a converted asteroid, deep in a region of space where no one ever traveled. She had never seen Earth, never felt real sunlight, never breathed air that wasn't recycled through ancient machines. The adults around her spoke of a blue planet with endless skies and oceans, but to Samin those were just fairy tales. Her reality was steel corridors, dim lights, and the constant hum of life support systems struggling to keep working. Refuge Station Alpha was home to 12,000 survivors, living in spaces meant for maybe 3,000. Every resource was precious. Water was recycled dozens of times. Food was grown in cramped hydroponic bays that barely produced enough. Children like Soman grew up learning to fix things. Because if something broke and couldn't be repaired, people died. Soman's teacher was an old woman named Yoonji who had been an engineer on Earth. Yoonji taught the children everything about the station's systems, making them memorize every pipe, every circuit, every backup system. "One day," Yoonji would say, "we will need to build again, and you children will be the ones who do it." Most adults had given up hope. They were just trying to survive another day, another year, but Yoonji and a few others believed humanity could be more than refugees hiding in the dark. They just needed time and opportunity. That opportunity came in the form of Junho Kang. Junho was a salvage captain, one of the brave or crazy ones who ventured into collective space to steal technology. His ship, the Ghost Wind, was small and fast, painted black to blend with the void. Junho and his crew would find abandoned collective outposts, raid them for equipment and data, then disappear before anyone noticed. It was incredibly dangerous work. The collective had sensors everywhere, patrol ships constantly scanning for anomalies. But Junho had learned to move like a shadow, to time his raids when patrols were elsewhere, to make everything look like equipment failures or pirate attacks from known alien criminals. Never anything that would make the collective think humanity still existed. On one raid, Junho found something incredible. A collective research station that had been abandoned after a solar flare damaged its systems. Inside, his team discovered computers full of technical data, power generation systems far beyond what Earth had developed, weapon designs, ship blueprints, medical technology. It was a treasure trove. Junho brought everything back to a secret meeting point where several hidden human colonies had representatives. Among them was Narration, a scientist who had been just a university student when Earth fell. Nari looked at the stolen data like a starving person looking at food. "This changes everything," she said, her hands shaking as she scrolled through files. "With this knowledge, we can upgrade our ships, improve our life support, maybe even—" She stopped, afraid to say it out loud. "Maybe even fight back," Junho finished for her. The other representatives argued about this. Some said humanity should stay hidden forever, that revealing themselves would only bring the collective back to finish the job. Others said they were barely surviving, that without better technology, the refugee populations would slowly die out anyway. A younger man named Min Seok-bai spoke up. He had been a soldier before Earth's fall, one of the few who escaped. "We don't have to reveal ourselves to fight back. Small strikes, sabotage, make it look like accidents. We hurt them without them knowing who's doing it." This idea gained support. Over the next several years, Min Seok trained small teams of fighters who would infiltrate collective operations and cause carefully planned disasters. A mining facility's reactor would have a malfunction and explode. A supply convoy would have a navigation error and crash into an asteroid. Collective officials in remote sectors would mysteriously disappear. Each attack was designed to look like something else. The collective never suspected a coordinated campaign. They blamed pirates, equipment failures, incompetent personnel. They never imagined that the extinct humans were responsible. Meanwhile, Nari and her team of scientists worked miracles with the stolen technology. They adapted collective power systems to human ships, making them faster and more efficient. They studied alien weapons and found ways to build similar ones from available materials. They learned new manufacturing techniques that let them do more with less. Soman, now a teenager, watched all this with growing excitement. The adults were changing. Instead of just surviving, they were building something. She spent every free moment in the engineering bays, learning from Nari's team, helping to retrofit old human ships with new technology. But it was the younger generation that really pushed for change. Yuna Oh was only 25, but she had a gift for strategy that the older military leaders recognized. She had grown up hearing stories of Earth's destruction, and those stories had shaped her into someone who thought differently than the survivors. The older generation thought about survival. Yuna thought about winning. She presented her ideas to the scattered human leadership through secret communications. "We can't hide forever," she argued. "Eventually they'll find us, or we'll die out from lack of resources. We need to think bigger, not just survival. Liberation. Liberation?" One of the old admirals scoffed. "We have maybe 50 ships that can fight. They have thousands. We have 50 million people total. They control billions across hundreds of worlds." "Exactly," Yuna said. "They control billions. How many of those billions are slaves? How many species are serving the collective because they have no choice? If we free them, we won't be fighting alone." The idea was radical and dangerous, but it planted seeds in people's minds. Yuna began training a new generation of warriors, combining everything humanity had learned from centuries of Earth warfare with lessons from fighting the collective. She studied every piece of data from every raid, learning how the collective fought, where their weaknesses were, how they thought. She also proposed something that made the older leaders nervous. "We need to stop thinking like refugees and start thinking like a civilization again. We need goals beyond survival. We need to give people hope for something better." Debates raged across the hidden human colonies. Some called Yuna reckless, saying her ideas would get everyone killed. Others, especially the younger survivors, rallied to her vision. They were tired of hiding, tired of living in fear, tired of recycled air and cramped spaces and hopeless futures. The turning point came when Junho's salvage teams discovered something that changed everything. Deep in a forgotten nebula, Where sensors couldn't penetrate, they found a megastructure. It was ancient, left behind by a species that had died out long before the collective even formed. And it was a construction facility, designed to build ships on a massive scale. When Nari saw the scans of the structure, she actually cried. If we can restore this, if we can make it work, we could build a fleet, a real fleet. The discovery was reported to Taijin Yun, who had become the unofficial leader of the scattered human refugees. Taijin was old now, his hair gray, his face lined with years of stress and grief. He looked at the data and made a decision that would change humanity's future. We restore the facility, he said. We build our fleet, and then we decide what to do with it. It took every resource humanity had saved over 50 years. Ships from different colonies converged on the nebula, bringing equipment, personnel, and hope. Thousands of humans who had been living in cramped refugee stations suddenly had a purpose beyond just surviving another day. Somin was among the first volunteers to work on the megastructure. She was 19 now, a skilled engineer, and she threw herself into the restoration work with passion. The ancient facility was enormous, its systems far beyond anything humanity or even the collective had built. But piece by piece they figured it out. Nari led the technical teams, working 18-hour days to understand alien technology that was older than human civilization. Yuna coordinated security, making sure their work remained hidden. Junho and his salvagers brought in materials and more stolen collective technology to study and incorporate. And slowly, incredibly, the ancient megastructure came back to life. 10 years after its discovery, the first ship rolled out of the construction bays. It was unlike anything humanity had built before, sleeker, more powerful, incorporating human ingenuity, collective technology, and ancient alien engineering into something new. They named it the Earth's Vengeance. More ships followed. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, support vessels. A fleet was taking shape in the hidden nebula. And with it, humanity's plans evolved from mere survival to something much more ambitious. The Phoenix was preparing to rise from the ashes. And when it did, the galaxy would tremble. Rising from the ashes, the fleet grew in secret, hidden in the nebula where sensors could not reach and eyes could not see. After 10 years of constant work, humanity had built 47 warships, each one a masterpiece of combined technologies. They were not as numerous as the collective's fleet, but they were built with one advantage the collective did not expect: humanity's experience with total war. Yunbi Quan had been a young officer during Earth's fall. Now she was old, her hair white, her body weak, but her mind was sharp as ever. She stood on the bridge of the Earth's Vengeance, the fleet's flagship, and looked at the holographic display showing every ship under her command. It still seemed impossible that they had come this far. "Admiral," a young communications officer said, "General O is requesting a meeting with the fleet commanders." Yunbi nodded. Yuna O had become the strategic mind behind humanity's military forces. What had started as training camps had evolved into a full military doctrine. Yuna had studied every battle humanity had ever fought, every mistake the collective made during Earth's destruction, every weakness their raids had revealed. She had created something new, a way of fighting that combined human unpredictability with cold calculation. The meeting took place in the flagship's war room. Commanders from all the major ships attended through holographic projection, their images surrounding a central tactical display. Yuna stood at the center looking younger than her 40 years, her eyes burning with focused intensity. "The Phoenix Protocol is ready for implementation," she announced. "We have the ships. We have the weapons. We have the intelligence. Now we need to decide if we're truly ready to reveal ourselves to the galaxy." The room fell silent. This was the moment everyone had been working toward, but it was still terrifying. For 70 years, humanity's survival had depended on staying hidden. Now they were considering announcing their existence in the most dramatic way possible. Taijin Yun's image appeared among the holograms. He was very old now, his voice weak, but he was still the person humanity looked to for guidance. "Tell us the plan, General. Tell us what you're proposing." Yuna brought up a star map. The collective maintains control through fear and overwhelming force. They have superior numbers, but they're spread thin across hundreds of systems. Their strength is also their weakness. We can't win a direct war against their full military, but we don't need to. We just need to break their image of invincibility. She zoomed in on a specific system, Talvos 4. It's a processing world where the collective sends conquered species for re-education. Essentially, they break people's spirits and turn them into obedient servants. There are over 1 million beings from a dozen different species there, guarded by a collective garrison of about 5,000 soldiers and 20 warships. One of the commanders frowned. "You want our first strike to be a rescue mission?" "I want our first strike to mean something," Yuna replied. "If we just attack a military target, we're just another enemy to be crushed. But if we free slaves, if we show the galaxy that someone is willing to fight the collective's tyranny, we inspire others. We start a rebellion, not just a war." Yunbi studied the tactical data. "The garrison will send a distress signal the moment we appear. The collective will know humanity survived." "Yes," Yuna said simply. "That's exactly what I'm counting on. We stop hiding and start fighting. The collective thinks they're invincible. We prove them wrong." The debate lasted for hours. Some argued for more time, more ships, more preparation. Others argued for a different target. But in the end, the vote was called. Humanity would strike at Talvos 4. They would announce their survival to the galaxy, and they would do it in a way that made a statement about who they were and what they stood for. 3 weeks later, the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in the Talvos system. Min Song commanded the assault wing, 12 destroyers and 4 cruisers that would handle the collective warships. His hands were steady on the controls as the enemy ships appeared on sensors. The collective garrison was scattered, not expecting any threat. "Their mistake, all ships weapons-free," Min ordered. "Disable their communications first. I don't want them calling for help until we're ready to talk." The human ships opened fire with precision. New weapons designed from stolen collective technology but improved by human engineering lanced across space. The collective garrison ships tried to respond, but they were caught completely off guard. 3 were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The rest scrambled to form a defensive formation, but it was too late. Minji's destroyers moved like wolves around a herd, fast and coordinated. They had practiced these maneuvers thousands of times in simulators. Now in real combat, they executed perfectly. One by one, the collective ships were disabled or destroyed. The entire battle lasted 11 minutes. On the planet's surface, collective soldiers were still trying to understand what was happening when human dropships descended. The soldiers who emerged were equipped with power armor and weapons that combined human and alien technology into something terrifying. They moved through the prison facilities with brutal efficiency, killing guards and freeing prisoners. One of the freed prisoners, a being that looked like a large cat with 6 limbs, stared at the human soldiers in confusion. "Who are you? What species?" The soldier's helmet retracted, showing a human face. "We're humans. The collective tried to wipe us out. They failed. Now we're here to make sure they don't do to others what they did to us." Within 2 hours, every prisoner on Talvos 4 was freed, and every collective soldier was either dead or captured. The human fleet moved into orbit and finally allowed the collective's distress signals to transmit. Yunbi stood on the bridge of the Earth's vengeance and authorized the galaxy-wide broadcast that Yuna had prepared. The message went out on every collective communication channel in every known language. "Attention, Galactic Collective. This is Fleet Admiral Yunbi Quan of humanity. 70 years ago, you attempted to exterminate our species. You destroyed our homeworld and declared us extinct. You were wrong. We survived. We hid in the darkness and we rebuilt. We have returned, and we bring a message." The broadcast showed images of Earth's destruction, of the billions who died, of the collective's casual cruelty in eliminating an entire species for the crime of existing. "We do not seek conquest. We do not seek to dominate. But we will no longer allow the collective to decide which species deserves to live and which must die. We will no longer allow tyranny to rule the galaxy unopposed. To all enslaved species, to all conquered peoples, we say this: rise up. Fight for your freedom. You are not alone anymore. Humanity stands with you." The broadcast ended with the coordinates of Talvos 4 and an open invitation for any species seeking liberation to join humanity's. As the galaxy exploded into chaos, in the collective council chambers, panic reigned. The species they had destroyed had returned with a fleet, with advanced technology, and with a message that threatened to tear apart the collective's entire power structure. Counselor Vrextal, the insectoid leader, demanded immediate military response, but the collective's military was already stretched thin. They controlled hundreds of systems, and now those systems were beginning to rebel. On a dozen worlds, enslaved species rose up, attacking their collective overseers. News of Talvos IV's liberation spread like wildfire. Humanity had done the impossible. They had struck at the collective and won. More importantly, they had inspired hope. Back on the Earth's vengeance, Yunbi watched the intelligence reports flowing in. Rebellions were starting. Some would be crushed, but others would succeed. The galaxy was waking up to the possibility that the collective could be opposed. Yuna joined her on the bridge, a rare smile on her face. It's working. The collective is splitting their forces to deal with the rebellions. They're exactly where we want them. We've made ourselves a target, Yunbi said quietly. They'll come for us with everything they have. Good, Yuna replied. Let them come. We've had 70 years to prepare for this fight. They're about to learn what happens when you try to exterminate humanity and fail. Soman Han, now a commander of the engineering corps, was working on upgrading the fleet's weapons when she heard the news of their victory. She thought about her childhood in the cramped refugee station, about the years of barely surviving, about all the people who had died in hiding, and she thought about what they were building now. Not just ships, but a future. In the hidden nebula, the ancient megastructure continued producing more ships. Humanity's fleet was growing, and they were no longer alone. The first Kel-3 ships arrived, former slaves who had stolen collective vessels and joined humanity's cause. Then came the Sivari, aquatic beings in specialized life support ships bringing knowledge of collective military deployments. An alliance was forming. The oppressed species of the galaxy were uniting around humanity's example. The collective had ruled through fear for 12,000 years. But humanity, risen from the ashes of extinction, was teaching the galaxy that fear could be overcome. The phoenix had emerged from the darkness, and its fire would burn away the old order, making way for something new. The Shadow War, the collective, had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. In all that time, no one had challenged their authority and survived. Now, 3 months after Talvos IV, they were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that refused to fight by their rules. Counselor Vrextal stood in the command center on Unity Prime, the collective's capital world, watching tactical displays that showed chaos spreading across their territory. Red markers indicated rebellions. Yellow markers showed systems that had gone silent. Blue markers tracked the human fleet, which seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. How many ships do they have? Vrextal demanded. A military advisor, a being made of living crystal, consulted the data. Our estimates range from 40 to 200 vessels. They use stealth technology we cannot fully counter. They strike fast and disappear before our response fleets arrive. Then station fleets at every important system. Overwhelm them with numbers. We have tried, Counselor. Our military is spread across 400 systems. If we concentrate forces, the humans simply avoid those systems and strike elsewhere. If we spread our forces evenly, they achieve local superiority wherever they attack. They are fighting a guerrilla war on a galactic scale. Vrextal's mandibles clicked in frustration. This was not how wars were supposed to work. The collective had massive fleets, advanced technology, and 12,000 years of experience. They should be crushing these upstart humans easily. Instead, they were being bled by 1,000 cuts. The truth was, humanity had learned from their defeat. They were not trying to match the collective's strength. They were exploiting its weaknesses. Yuna. O coordinated the campaign from a mobile command ship that never stayed in one place for more than a few days. She had divided the human fleet into small task forces that operated independently, striking targets of opportunity, then vanishing before the collective could respond. But humanity was also looking for allies, and they found them among the species the collective had conquered. Jiwan Li was now 87 years old. She had spent most of her life hiding after Earth's destruction, believing her career as a diplomat was over. But when humanity revealed itself, Yuna had come to her personally. We need you, Yuna had said. We're going to win battles, but you need to win species to our cause. We can't do this alone. So Jiwan had come out of hiding and resumed her role as humanity's voice to the galaxy. Her first mission was to the Kel-3 homeworld, a planet that had been enslaved by the collective for 300 years. The Kel-3 were reptilian beings, strong and proud, who had been forced to serve as laborers and soldiers for their conquerors. Jiwan's ship approached the Kel-3 resistance base hidden in an asteroid field. When she met with their leaders, she did not make grand promises or try to impress them. Instead, she told them the truth. The collective destroyed Earth. They killed billions of my people. We survived by hiding, by being patient, by preparing. Now we're fighting back, not for conquest, but to end the collective's tyranny. We cannot do it alone, but together we might have a chance. The Kelthri leader, a scarred warrior named Kethrall, studied the old human woman. Why should we trust you? How do we know you won't become just another collective once you have power? Jiwon met his eyes. You don't. All you have is our actions. Judge us by what we do, not what we say. We freed Talvos 4. We're sharing our technology with rebel groups. We're asking you to fight beside us, not for us. If that's not enough, then we understand. Kethrall was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his clawed hand. The Kelthri will fight beside humanity. We will either all be free or we will all die trying. That alliance was just the beginning. Young-Soo Han, a diplomat trained by Jiwon, made contact with the Sivari, aquatic beings who lived in vast underwater cities. The Sivari had been forced to provide the collective with rare minerals from ocean planets. They had detailed knowledge of collective shipping routes and supply chains. With that information, human raiders began targeting collective supply lines, crippling their ability to maintain their fleets. The war evolved into something the collective had never faced. It was not a traditional war with front lines and decisive battles. It was a shadow war, where the enemy struck from unexpected directions, turned conquered species against their masters, and disappeared before overwhelming force could be brought to bear. The collective's response was to escalate. They assembled their largest battle fleet, over 1,500 ships, under the command of High Admiral Zexthen. The fleet's mission was simple: find the main human fleet and destroy it utterly. But finding humanity's fleet was harder than expected. Min Jae-song had become an expert at hit-and-run tactics. His destroyer squadron would jump into a system, destroy a collective outpost or free another slave world, then jump out before enemy reinforcements arrived. He moved in unpredictable patterns, never attacking the same type of target twice in a row, never staying in one region of space too long. When intelligence reported that the massive collective fleet was searching for humanity's main forces, Min Jae smiled. Let them search. While they're chasing shadows, we'll continue freeing their slaves and destroying their infrastructure. The decisive confrontation came at the Crimson Nebula. Yunbi had gathered 60 human ships, along with 30 Kelthri vessels and 20 Sivari support ships. It was the largest concentration of Allied forces yet, and intelligence suggested the collective fleet was moving to intercept them. Some of her officers argued for withdrawing, avoiding the fight, but Yunbi disagreed. We've been hitting them with small strikes, she said. They need to see that we can also stand and fight. The collective fleet may have more ships, but this nebula will limit their ability to coordinate. If we fight smart, we can win. Yuna agreed with the assessment. The collective expects us to run. Instead, we fight. We show every rebel group watching that the collective can be beaten in open battle. The collective fleet entered the Crimson Nebula, expecting an easy victory. They had 1,500 ships against barely 100 rebel vessels. But the nebula's interference fields disrupted their sensors and communications. Their superior numbers meant less when they couldn't coordinate effectively. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. Human ships working in small, coordinated groups targeted collective vessels that became separated from the main fleet. The Kelthri, experienced in close-quarters combat, rammed enemy ships and boarded them. The Sivari used specialized weapons that disrupted collective shields. Min Jae led the attack wing with precision, his destroyers moving through the nebula's interference like they belonged there. Every simulation, every training exercise had prepared them for this. They knew the environment better than the enemy. They used it as a weapon. The collective had never fought an enemy that adapted so quickly. Humanity studied their tactics during the battle and adjusted in real time. When the collective tried to concentrate their forces, human ships scattered and attacked from different directions. When the collective spread out to search, human ships achieved local superiority and destroyed isolated vessels. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the collective fleet had lost over 500 ships and retreated in disorder. The rebel fleet had lost 35 ships, a heavy price, but they had held the field. They had won. News of the Battle of Crimson Nebula spread across the galaxy faster than the collective could suppress it. The supposedly invincible collective had been beaten in open combat by rebels and humans. More species began to rise up. The collective's grip on their empire was slipping, but humanity also paid a price for victory. Thousands of human soldiers and crew had died. Ships that took years to build were destroyed in minutes. Umbi walked through the damaged corridors of the Earth's vengeance, seeing the wounded being treated, hearing the names of the dead being reported. She found Yuna in the war room, studying casualty reports with a grim expression. Was it worth it? Yunbi asked quietly. Yuna looked up, and for the first time Yunbi saw doubt in the younger woman's eyes. But then Yuna straightened. Yes, because now the galaxy knows the collective can bleed. That's worth everything. In the shadows, another part of the war was happening. Heian Lim was humanity's best hacker, a woman who could navigate collective computer networks like she was born to them. She led a team of specialists who infiltrated enemy systems, stealing intelligence and planting viruses. Their greatest achievement came when Heian managed to access the collective's central intelligence database. She didn't just steal information. She planted a virus that would slowly corrupt their data, making them doubt their own intelligence reports, seeing threats where there were none, missing real dangers while chasing phantoms. Other human operatives worked in the shadows. Sun Wu Choi was an assassin, trained to move unseen and strike without warning. In 3 months, he eliminated 7 collective governors and 4 military commanders. Each assassination was made to look like an accident or internal collective politics. The enemy leadership began to fear their own shadows. The shadow war was working. The collective was beginning to fracture under pressure they had never experienced before. Their military was stretched thin, their leadership was paranoid, and their conquered subjects were rebelling. Humanity Ascendant Unity Prime had never been threatened in 12,000 years. The capital world of the Galactic Collective was protected by 6 layers of orbital defense platforms, 300 warships on permanent station, and a planetary shield that could withstand bombardment from an entire fleet. The collective leadership believed their capital was impregnable. They were about to learn they were wrong. The coalition fleet gathered in the outer system, just beyond sensor range. It was the largest rebel force ever assembled. 140 human ships, 80 Kel-3 warships, 50 Sivari vessels, and another 100 ships from a dozen other species that had joined the cause. Against them stood the collective's most powerful defenses and the remains of their military might. Yunbi stood on the bridge of the Earth's vengeance, looking at the tactical display with a mixture of determination and dread. This would be humanity's greatest battle. If they won, they would break the collective's power forever. If they lost, the rebellion would be crushed and humanity would likely face true extinction this time. We're receiving final readiness reports from all fleet elements, her communications officer reported. All ships are prepared to begin the operation. Yunbi nodded. But before she could give the order to advance, Yuna entered the bridge. The general looked exhausted. For the past 6 months, she had been coordinating the campaign that brought them to this moment, barely sleeping, pushing herself and everyone else to the limit. The siege begins, Yunbi said. Any final thoughts? Yuna looked at the display showing Unity Prime, that heavily defended world that represented everything the collective stood for. We don't rush this. We learned patience over 70 years of hiding. We use that patience now. We strangle them slowly, cut off their supplies, let them panic. Then when they're weak, we strike. The siege of Unity Prime began not with a massive assault, but with a blockade. The coalition fleet spread out around the system, intercepting every ship trying to reach or leave the capital. Supply convoys were turned back or destroyed. Communications were jammed. Unity Prime was cut off from the rest of the collective's territory. Inside the blockade, collective leadership watched their stockpiles dwindle. They had food and supplies for their population, but maintaining 300 warships and 6 layers of defense platforms required constant resupply. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, all of it was running low. Councillor Vrextal called an emergency session. We must break the blockade. Send the fleet out to engage them. If we send the fleet out, we lose the protection of our orbital defenses, a military advisor warned. The humans will simply avoid direct combat and maintain the blockade from a distance. Then what do you suggest? That we sit here and slowly starve? Nobody had a good answer. Outside, the coalition forces maintained their patience. Minjae's squadron would occasionally dart in close to the defense platforms, launch a few missiles, then retreat before the collective ships could respond. These hit-and-run attacks did minimal damage but kept the defenders on constant alert, wearing them down, forcing them to expend ammunition. Sivari ships used specialized sensors to map the defense network, finding weak points and blind spots. Kel-3 boarding specialists prepared for the eventual assault, training constantly. And in the command ship, Nari and her team worked on the problem of the planetary shield. It's old technology, Nari explained to Unbi, but very powerful. A direct assault would take weeks to wear it down, and we don't have weeks. But I've been studying the stolen collective data, and I think I found something. She brought up a schematic of the shield generator network. The shield is powered by 6 main generators spaced around the planet. They're heavily defended, but if we can get close enough, I can transmit a signal that will cause a feedback loop in their systems. It won't destroy them, but it will force them to shut down for several minutes. That's our window. Several minutes, Yuna repeated. That's not much time. It's enough, Minji interjected. If we coordinate properly. We'll have assault teams ready to launch the moment the shield drops. We hit the defense platforms first, clear a path, then put troops on the ground. The plan was refined over the next month while the siege continued. Meanwhile, Heiyun and her team of hackers worked their magic. They managed to infiltrate Unity Prime's communication network and began spreading propaganda. Videos of freed slaves, testimonies from liberated worlds, evidence of collective atrocities. All of it was broadcast to Unity Prime's population. Many of the beings living on Unity Prime were not collective loyalists. They were workers, clerks, service personnel from conquered species who had been brought there to serve. Heiyun's broadcast reached them and doubt began to spread. Inside the collective council chambers, paranoia grew. Some counselors began to suspect others of treason. Accusations flew. The unity that had held the collective together for millennia started to crack. 6 months into the siege, the time came for the final assault. Nari's team positioned specialized transmission ships at key points around Unity Prime. Minjae had his assault wings ready, engines hot, weapons charged. Yuna coordinated ground forces from dozens of different species, all prepared to storm the planet once the shield fell. Yunbi gave the order. All units execute Phoenix Strike. The transmission ships sent their signal. On Unity Prime's surface, the 6 shield generators received unexpected commands that exploited a vulnerability in their ancient programming. The generators began to overload. Safety systems kicked in, and within 30 seconds, the planetary shield flickered and died. The coalition fleet surged forward. Minjae's destroyers hit the first layer of defense platforms with overwhelming firepower. Human missiles, designed from stolen collective technology but improved through human engineering, tore through shields and armor. Kel-3 warships followed, their crews howling battle cries as they engaged the collective warships. The collective defenders fought back desperately. Space filled with weapons fire, exploding ships and debris. But the coalition had planned every move, every vector of attack. They had trained for this moment. The defenders, demoralized by 6 months of siege, caught off guard by the sudden assault, began to break. One by one, the layers of orbital defenses fell. The cost was high. Dozens of coalition ships were destroyed. Thousands of brave soldiers died in the fighting. But they kept pushing forward, and the collective could not stop them. When the orbital defenses were cleared, the ground assault began. Dropships by the hundreds descended on Unity Prime, carrying soldiers from a dozen species. Yuna led the human ground forces personally, storming the primary military command center. The collective's elite guards fought with fanatical determination. These were beings who had spent their lives serving the collective, who believed completely in its mission. But they were facing enemies who had suffered under collective rule, who fought not for ideology but for freedom. The battle for Unity Prime's surface lasted 3 days. It was brutal. Close quarters fighting through cities and military installations. Buildings were destroyed, streets became battlegrounds, and the casualties mounted on both sides. But slowly, inexorably, the coalition forces advanced. On the 3rd day, Yuna's forces breached the collective council chambers. Most of the counselors had fled or been killed in the fighting, but Vrextal remained, standing in the center of the empty chamber as human soldiers surrounded him. "You have won," Vrextal said, his translated voice bitter. Now you will rule as we did. You will become what you fought against. Yuna looked at the insectoid being who represented 12,000 years of tyranny. No, she said simply. We won't. Frextal and the surviving collective leadership were taken into custody. The fighting ended as collective forces across Unity Prime surrendered. The capital of the Galactic Collective had fallen. But the hardest part came next, deciding what to do with victory. The coalition leadership met to discuss the fate of the collective. Many wanted vengeance. The Kelthri demanded that collective leaders be executed for their crimes. Others wanted to dismantle the collective completely, to scatter its species and ensure it could never rise again. Jiwan Li attended these meetings, listening to the debates. Finally, she stood to speak. At 90 years old, she was the oldest human survivor from before Earth's fall, one of the last who remembered first contact and everything that followed. The collective destroyed Earth, she said quietly. They killed my family, my friends, billions of my people. I have every reason to want revenge. But if we give in to that desire, if we respond to their genocide with our own atrocities, then we become what destroyed us. We prove that the collective was right to fear us. She looked around the room at the representatives from all the liberated species. We have a choice. We can build something better. Not a new empire, but an alliance of equals, where species are judged by their actions, not their potential threats, where disagreements are settled through dialogue, not extermination. The debate continued for weeks. In the end, they established the Galactic Alliance, a coalition built on principles of mutual defense and species sovereignty. The collective leadership faced trials for war crimes, judged by representatives from all the species they had oppressed. Some were executed, some imprisoned, some exiled.